On February 2nd of 2019, Johnny Walker and Justin Ledet fought on the main card of the UFC on ESPN Plus 2 main card. I'll just play through the replay of what happened in the fight.
We're underway here.
This is pretty much the whole fight.
In the 205-pound division, Justin Ledet is the underdog.
Hook kick, spinning back fist, missed head kick.
And now heavy shots, but he fired a kick.
And he gets the finish right there. So that's his second win in the UFC. He had a win over, I'm trying to think, the guy who knocked out Gokhan Saki, Khalil Roundtree. He knocked Roundtree out with an elbow in the first round. So 2 fights in the UFC plus the Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series win, 2 first-round finishes. And in the light heavyweight division, which isn't a very deep division right now, there's a lot of talk about him potentially working his way all the way up to John Jones by the end of the year. That wasn't just me saying that. That's Dan Hardy in the post-fight show. The guy who's fighting John Jones right now, Anthony Smith, went from being a low-ranked middleweight to earning a title shot in 3 fights at light heavyweight. So a lot of room to grow in the division. Now, as far as where he should go next, what I just want to look at right now is who the top 15 are at light heavyweight, and then talk about how I think those matchups would go and if I think that it's worth having those matchups right now. So at 15 is Nikita Krylov. Personally, I think this is probably the best matchup he can put together right now. It's the first guy that he'd face to be ranked. It's the guy who's at the bottom of the top 15 with Krylov. Krylov's got a very good striking, so you'd have a lot of interesting exchanges from the feet. And Krylov's got decent grappling to the point where he might be able to force the fight to the mat, and you could really see more from Johnny Walker. Now, Walker's only been fighting for 5 years. His technique isn't exactly the most crisp, but he's extremely long and extremely powerful, so he can get away with it at times. Obviously, he looked pretty wild in this fight, but got a 15-second knockout, so you really can't get a whole lot better than that. I don't even think he took a single shot. So for him, the next test is going to be, can we see him against some better strikers who are going to be able to handle his length and handle his power? And can we see him against some better grapplers? And how is he going to be able to handle them? Is he going to be able to keep him at range and put him out with shots? Is he going to be able to actually grapple with them? What's going to happen there? So I think Krylov's an interesting match, and that the striking will be an interesting battle. But then also, if Krylov can actually get the fight to the mat, that also would be interesting. At 14, Misha Cirkunov. He's more of a grappler. He has decent striking, but he's had some issues getting knocked out in his previous fights. So that's one of those ones where on the mat, Cirkunov should have a huge advantage. On the feet, Cirkunov might be a little bit more technical, but you'd figure that probably favors Johnny Walker on the feet. So it'd be interesting to see how he handles the threat of a guy in Cirkunov who's a high-level black belt. What's he going to do? Is his striking going to be less wild because he's afraid of the takedown? So I think there's something interesting there, and that'd be a good matchup where it's probably a little bit more. I think it's probably an easier fight for him than Krylov. Both are difficult fights, with that being said, but I think that's a fight that would be a good name for him to get under his belt if he gets that victory. For Shogun Rua, Shogun's technically better than him everywhere, but his chin has kind of been going as his fight career has gone on. So they could kind of have a similar situation to the Anthony Smith situation where you just have like this really long, really strong guy who puts him out early. So that could be an ugly fight for him. I don't know if it's really worth putting him in a Shogun fight quite yet. I think you probably want to give him a Cirkunov or a Krylov first. OSP, that could be another interesting matchup. Doesn't really do a whole lot for me. I'd watch it either way. It's interesting. OSP's kind of been on a bit of a downturn lately. Obviously was working his way near the top 5 before, had that fight with John Jones. Broke his arm and hasn't quite been that consistent since then. Glover Teixeira, his chin also has kind of been a little bit iffy of late, but he's coming off of a really big win over Carl Roberson where he almost got knocked out, came back, got on top, and then that was another match where his grappling was just much better than the guy who's fighting. Similar to what you would expect with a Cirkunov fight. I think some similarities between Glover and Cirkunov in terms of what type of matchup you would expect between them and Johnny Walker. Jimmy Manoa, another guy who hits really hard, doesn't have the reach, but he's a lot tighter with his punches. That'd be interesting to fight to see. That fight you could almost guarantee would be standing up, and you can pretty much guarantee that someone's getting knocked out. So as a fan, if they put that fight together, I absolutely love it. Is he ready for a top 10 fight yet? I don't know. I think he probably should get a fight with a guy like Cirkunov or Krylov first. Latifi. Latifi's a great wrestler. The reach disadvantage there would be kind of funny to watch, but I could just see Latifi bowling forward and just forcing a takedown and making it a wrestling match. And as long as it's a 3-round fight, I could see him keeping up enough energy to be able to get a victory there. So I think you probably want to give Walker some more time to work on his grappling before he faces a guy like Latifi. Dominic Reyes. Some similarities to Walker in that they're both kind of like long guys. They both hit pretty hard. a little bit wild, but they're starting to rein it in. Now, Reyes actually has some pretty good jiu-jitsu credentials. I believe he was a world medalist at blue belt, which, granted, blue belt isn't exactly the highest belt. And so obviously, it's the second lowest, but when you're starting medal at blue belt, that means you've got some decent grappling, especially in a competition like the Worlds. So I believe he's got a pretty good grappling edge on Johnny Walker. I'd imagine he would. And then on the feet, it'd be interesting to see how they battle it out. Thiago Santos, I mean, that'd just be a war. I think in a lot of the same ways with Jimmy Manuwa. Obviously, Manuwa and Santos had a fantastic fight on the feet, so you could look for some similarities there. Santos would probably throw a few more kicks than Manuwa would. Fun fight to watch, but is it really a fight that he should be getting next? Probably not. Corey Anderson, again, kind of like the Latifi fight, would be a guy who just want to grapple with him the whole time. Now Anderson's a lot longer and is going to probably be a little more effective at closing the range, but I don't think they're going to give him that fight quite yet. Volkan Ozdemir, he's been falling back a little bit with a couple of recent losses, but I don't think that's the next fight for him. Although, again, you got another long light heavyweight who hits really hard. So it'd be a fun fight, but not quite yet. And then as we keep moving up, Jan Blachowicz has been on a hot streak of late. Pretty well-rounded all around. It'd be interesting to see if he'd be able to get the fight to the mat where he'd have the edge. But if not, I could see Walker giving him some trouble on the feet. Anthony Smith, obviously he's got a title fight coming up right now. Interesting matchup there again. I would see Smith probably just taking him down and beating him up, though. I think that'd be a pretty easy win for Anthony Smith. Gus, again, Gus could probably beat him from any range. He could just keep it on the feet and pick him apart, take him down, beat him up. And then obviously Cormier and Jones, you would figure, would both have pretty big edges on Johnny Walker at this point. But either way, good to see Johnny Walker getting these early wins in his career. Good to see him getting these highlight reel knockouts. He's shown a lot of personality, which is great. Light heavyweight division, they're lacking guys who are actually going to be competitive with the top guys in the division, but they're also lacking guys who have great personalities. So with Walker, at least at this moment, it looks like he might be able to do both. I'm not sure I believe in him quite yet, but I haven't seen him against the top guys to know whether or not this kind of stuff is a fluke. But again, great job by him one last time.
3 possible rounds in the 205-pound division. Justin Ledet is the underdog in the blue. Oh, Johnny Walker! Look out! And now heavy shot.